Hey everybody, this is Perch, and this is going to be an interesting take because this is all about wordplay. All right, so you may say, "Hey, we're just being kind of silly with some of the language here," and that's fair. That's absolutely fair. But I've thought about doing this video a few times, and I've always kind of backed away from it because I'm like, you're splitting hairs on terms. And then I don't know why I went down the rabbit hole of doing this, but I started this chart because I'm obsessive compulsive in various ways, and I'm always fascinated by the people who, when I post something, they will, the way they will come in and argue hot out the gate. I'm not talking about somebody who's like, I don't really disagree. I don't really agree here. I'm talking about somebody who's like, you're a bigot, or you're a cuck. One of these kinds of very, very aggressive first comment. He's wrong. That person is wrong. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Just very, very like, no filter. And you go look at the profiles of these people. Now, here's where YouTube doesn't help us that much, but every now and then I go look at these profiles, and 9 times out of 10, it's the same stuff. I mean, not even 9 times; it's like 99 times out of 100. It's every time you can predict exactly what you're going to see, whether it's certain kind of just inserted language. I mean, the funny part about Twitter profiles is they become just like a Mad Lib word salad now, of like trying to cram in every possible signaling kind of statement that they could get in a limited set of characters. It's like here's my race, here's my identity, here's the pledges I support, here's some emojis that signify different flags that are good, and here's it. And it's like before long, there's no room for the sarcastic kind of pithy comment about how you like cats. There's just that you filled it all up. And conversely, you get the proud anti-vax. So here's an odd statement, by the way. You can be pro-vax, anti-vax. I find it weird to be proud pro-vax or proud anti-vax. That's just that to me. That's a little strange. Like I'm not proud about medicine. Like I mean, I like whiskey. Proud whiskey. I mean, that sounds better, to be honest. But proud vaccine, proud anti-vaccine. I don't know. That's weird. I don't like light beer. Proud anti-light beer. See that you sound like a dope. I don't. Just me. Anyway, these people all sound very, very similar, and in many cases, and certainly this is true for comic writers, comic pros as well. There's always some language around diversity. Diversity is important. You can't get out of diversity. Diversity AF, whatever. Queer and brown and proud. This kind of language. And here's where I want to kind of test you, the person listening to this, and see what your experience is. Because for a lot of you, I'm assuming, you're in companies, and companies are worrying about diversity right now. And so there's this program that you'll see called D&I, diversity and inclusion. And you've probably seen that. It's like, oh, you're going to take the D&I class, you're going to have the D&I seminar. Cool, D&I. If you look at comics, Twitter, and kind of all this, this language around how we're going to insert diversity into the comics, you'll notice that there's one thing that is missing when they talk about, we're going to promote diversity, we're going to increase diversity, we're going to add diversity. Do you know what it is? If you had to take one of these classes at work, I think you know right away what it is. It's missing the and inclusion. And this sounds like a detail, like what does that really matter to anything? But as it turns out, I think it matters quite a bit, because in a lot of cases, these efforts are not calling for inclusion. It's just calling for diversity. And I think if you're going to have true diversity, you need to include that inclusion, because inclusion, that's including. That's not replacing. That's not supplanting. That's not saying you had this and now you're going to get this. It's saying we need to start including more diversity. And again, this is wordplay. You can be rolling your eyes right now, But if you look at some of the very successful efforts that have happened in the past, and I would count like Midnight or Apollo as that, I would count Billy and Teddy of the Young Avengers as that, where they introduced gay couples into comics, and it was inclusive. I would call those very, very inclusive. These characters were rolled out. They did not, there was at no point did the writer say, "I'm so proud that everybody on this panel is gay." That's the opposite of inclusive. That's reductive. That's saying we're going to replace. That's saying that's not including. That's doing kind of the opposite. It's doing this weird almost segregation of diversity, which is not diversity. Imagine, if you will, if you could go back to the 80s and check out John Byrne's Twitter profile. Would he have had in his Twitter profile like white and bearded and straight as fuck? Would he have actually tried to? That's pretty funny to think about. I should do that as a bit, like Twitter profiles of people in the 80s. Jim Shooter, straight white male and very tall. I just that would be absurd, right? You would look at that and go, that is ridiculous on many levels to go out like that. Why would you describe it that way? That's silly. But what we have in comics right now is a lot of that. And I don't know the exact word, reductive, subtractive, replace. This isn't inclusion. And if you look at the efforts that were successful, it was very inclusive. If you go back even further, you look at, it's like, hey, let's have Monica Rambeau lead the Avengers. Let's have Storm lead the X-Men. They didn't have Storm show up and go, at no point was Chris Claremont saying, "I'm proud that a black woman is leading the X-Men." He didn't need to say that because we could all be proud of it. We just saw it. We got to read it. We got to experience it. It was inclusive. It was a big tint, which is a phrase that gets co-opted by Republicans and Democrats at different times. But it was exactly that. It was, hey, everybody, come around and experience this awesome thing. I've said before that the cool part about diversity, when you get it right, is that you get stronger, more powerful, more thoughtful products. You get things where you have a lot of different points of view in making these, shaping whatever the experience is. And it almost always makes your product stronger, better, smarter when you treat diversity as inclusive, when you treat it as, hey, we need to get more points of view in here. Hey, we need to watch out for blind spots that we might have because we've got only one demographic here. We've got only one point of view. So let's be inclusive with different ideas. Let's grow that. Let's include. That's why when you go to your company trainings and you go to these things, they emphasize very heavily, being inclusive. Being inclusive is it's a good thing. Who doesn't want it? Like, let's include you in this process. Let's include customers in this process. Let's include, better stories. Let's include different voices. Cool. But if you leave out that inclusion part, if you leave out the include, and you're just diversity, you get weird results. And what's strange is you get less diversity on many fronts. You could look at it one way and say, oh, look, where are the conservatives at Marvel? Yeah, I think that's a fair question. But you can also look at it and say, hey, look at some of the diverse, roles, some of the writers that were new. They didn't last more than a couple months. They weren't put on good books. Well, yeah, because they were treated as, let's cram some diversity in here. It wasn't inclusive. It didn't try and include anything to the overall story. Instead, it was, oh man, we need to be less white around here. Let's go out and find some people, and then find books for them. Hey, here's Danny. She could, they could put them on Champions. Champions got canceled. All right, find a one shot for Danny. That seems like, I mean, if you're Danny, if you're a strong writer, that would be ridiculously insulting. If it was me, I like that. F you. I don't want to, we got to find a room for Danny. That's a very weird way of going about it. When I see some of these panels come up, it goes, and I know I don't remember the writer. I think I remember the writer, but just to be clear, just be safe about it. In the comic, or sorry, on Twitter, they were posting a panel, and they said, "I'm really proud of this panel because if you look at it, there's no straight cis men on this panel anywhere, or straight cis. I don't remember straight cis white. I think it was straight cis white." And there's like a group of it's New Mutants. That it must have been Vita, and it was there was like 6 characters or something, and they're on the moon doing something, and it's like there's no straight white cis people, cis white. I don't remember that. Just a bunch of word salad words, and it was like I looked at that and go, well, that's diversity, but it's not inclusion. It's calling out something separate. And if you've gone through these trainings at workplaces and other things, they would tell you that's never the way to do it. That's never the way to kind of call out diversity because it feels reductive. It feels separate. It does not feel like you're including anyone in anything. It feels like, okay, here's my thing over here, here's your thing over there. That actually doesn't add benefit to anyone. So it's again, you could look at this and goes, you're splitting hairs, using a bunch of words. You could certainly make that argument. And you're right. I'm picking at some words here, but I'm fascinated by why larger companies, why other places are having success, and they are, in introducing diversity into their companies and rolling out these programs and getting people on board with it. And you don't see this weird, angry civil war going on inside of it, like you do in comics, like you do on Twitter, frankly, anything that goes on there. And there's just a difference to the way it's talked about, to the way it's described, to the way it's absorbed. I've worked with diverse groups of people on all fronts, gender, race. I've been the minority in the group many times. Half. I don't know, a lot, and it's never bothered me. It's never been one of those things I hyper focus on. It's in many cases, it's just, we work together. We figure out ways to include everybody and we get things done. And it functions great. That's, if you're going to introduce diversity, you need to take it from that angle. That's why maybe the including is the more powerful word in that statement. You leave it off, you get very, very weird results. It's amazing to me through this entire topic how many people seem to get on board really rapidly with things that sound like full-blown segregation. I find that bizarre. I see things rolled out every now and then. Like who was it in comics that was suggesting like we should have imprints and labels just for gay people, just for black people, just for white people? Like, no, that's a terrible idea. Like, don't do that. God, what a horrible world that would be for everybody. That's the opposite of inclusive. Anyway, some thoughts on the matter. Just playing it out in my head. So thanks for listening.